We have sign-up sheets for our email list and Facebook group, and you can talk to Tim and find out all those things that you want to know about Oasis. If you are not a visitor today and you are a regular, we want to thank you because you make us who we are. So thank you very much for being a part of our community. Today we have, I want to emphasize a core value. These are our core values. Here's my Vanna White. And I would like to emphasize meaning comes through making a difference, which hopefully we're all trying to do, especially in this world. It's been a week. It's been 6 weeks. So today we do not have a community moment. We're just going to have a main talk by our good friend Jenni Gillespie, who's a longtime member of Oasis. And so we're going to have little announcements now. We're going to have music by Glen Ackerman and Paul Peacock. And then we'll have the main talk, and we'll have a little break, and then we'll have question and answers, and we'll have more music, and then we'll have kind of the end and go on from there. Before we get started, I want to introduce a special guest. Yesterday, Oasis, along with Rice University, hosted Fish Stark, who is the executive president of the American Humanist Association. You want to stand up? He gave a great talk. Lots of, AHA is doing lots of good stuff. They've got a legal arm that's getting very involved, with children's programming, and then just all of you doing great things all over the United States. So I encourage you to look them up, and if you're not a member, please join up and support them in any way that you can. He is also speaking today at 1 o'clock at First Unitarian Universalist Church over on Fannin. So if you missed it yesterday, and we didn't record it yesterday, so if you missed his talk yesterday and you want to hear him, it'll be a little bit of a different talk, but I'm sure he's going to hit some of the same points. So feel free to go head over there at 1 to hear him there. All right, so we are going to start with some music by Glen and Paul. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. How are you? All right, one more time. I know we can do it. Good morning, everyone. How are you? Wonderful, wonderful. This is my friend Paul. We're going to play a few tunes, and the first one's called Joy Spring. 1, 2, 1. Thank you so much. All right. Hope everyone's enjoying yourselves. Again, my name is Glen Ackerman. I'm a fusion jazz artist here from Houston, Texas. Real quick, answer a few questions. Everyone always has questions about this. This is a bass, 6-string bass. The original electric bass has 4 strings, so it has these middle 4 strings. But what happened was, is in the early 90s, everyone went to 5 strings, which means that suddenly they had an extra low string. And so I bought one, and within a week, I'm like, no, I need another string. So I sold it and bought this one. With an extra string, extra high string, which allows me to do things that a guitar would do. Then, you know, and also I can compete with the range with the tenor sax, right? So, you know, these guys are, but they're low now, so, you know, I can do that too. All right, so that's my first thing. The second thing is if you're enjoying the music, you can find any of my tunes. You can go to Apple Music or Spotify. I have more tunes on Apple Music than Spotify because I think that Spotify has some shady business practices when it comes to independent artists, but I do have a little bit of music on there. But if Apple Music is the way to go, in my opinion, type Glen space Ackerman, and you'll see a listing. Look for the purple robot, right? Everyone here is now all curious. The purple robot, what does that mean? I'll leave it there, and you can find out when you find it. Fantastic. The next song we're going to do is a jazz standard written by Eddie Harris and stolen shamelessly by Miles Davis and claimed for himself. And I love the title. It means so much. And not only is the melody freeing, but the title is freeing. It's called Freedom Jazz Dance. All right, here we go. Thank you.
Just proving that music can be smoking and cool at the very same time. So we are glad to welcome Jenni Cafferty. She's one of our beloved community members, and we don't see her often in the summer because she's off doing things at national parks and all that kind of stuff. So we're glad to have her here before she goes off to do other things. And so please, Jenni, come tell us about the Sargasso Sea.
Okay. Hi, I'm Jenni Gillespie, and I am incredibly nervous. So if I totally blow it and flash you all with the laser that I'm trying to do up here, my apologies up front. If you live along the Gulf Coast, as we all do, you're bound to run into seaweed on the beach. And that seaweed comes from the Sargasso Sea, so I thought it might be appropriate. Is that good? Of course, I can't see my computer with this. Take a little swim in the Sargasso Sea. This is I'm going to read you an excerpt from a London paper dated 27 August, 1840. Nassau, ship deserted. A singular fact has taken place within the last few days. A large French vessel bound from Hamburg to Havana was discovered, completely abandoned. The greater part of her sails were set, and she did not appear to have sustained any damage. The cargo, composed of wines, fruits, silks, etc., was of very considerable value and in a most perfect condition. The captain's papers were all secure in their proper place. The soundings gave 3 feet of water in the hold, but there was no leak whatever. The only living beings found on board were a cat, some fowls, and several canaries half dead with hunger. The cabins of the officers and the passengers were very elegantly furnished, and everything indicated they had only recently been deserted. In one of them was found several articles belonging to a lady's toilet, together with a quantity of ladies' wearing apparel, apparently hastily thrown aside. The vessel, which must have been left within a very few hours, contains several bales of goods addressed to different merchants in Havana. She is very large, recently built, and called the Rosalie. Of her crew, no intelligence has been received. The Sargasso Sea, a sea with no land boundaries, closely tied in geography and in many people's minds with the Bermuda Triangle, which it overlaps. An area of mystery where monsters dwell, like the Sargasso ogre. Elizabethan pirates roam, and vanishing islands appear and disappear into the mist. It's captured the imagination of numerous storytellers, including Jules Verne, where it plays a part in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Ezra Pound, in his poem Portrait d'une Femme, opens with the words, "You and your mind are our Sargasso Sea." The 1968 film, The Lost Continent, was based on a fantasy novel, Uncharted Seas, by Dennis Wheatley, about a tramp steamer trapped in the Sargasso Sea, surrounded by killer seaweed, murderous crustaceans, and previously marooned descendants of Spanish conquistadors and pirates. Even Batman and Robin get into the picture. In issue 122, dated March 1959, has the stories Prisoners of the Sargasso Sea, in which our heroes discover ships trapped for centuries. They meet the pirate Jolly Roger, Eric of Norway, and Flavius from Rome. It turns out there's a mist that rises from the seaweed, which keeps them alive and ageless. The truth is no less intriguing. Portuguese sailors named the floating seaweed Sargassum after Sargasso, or Sargasso in modern Portuguese, a type of grape that grows in Portugal. Christopher Columbus wrote about the Sargasso Sea in his log on his first voyage. Columbus and his crew entered the Sargasso Sea in September 1492, just weeks after leaving Spain. They were surprised by the unusually calm and placid waters, a sharp contrast to the strong winds they were expecting to find. These calm conditions, known as the horse latitudes, caused concern among the sailors who feared they might be stranded. The sea was covered with masses of floating seaweed, so Columbus initially thought they might be getting close to shore. But this was a false hope, as they were still far from any landmass. The calm seas and the sight of so much seaweed led to growing anxiety among Columbus' crew. Many feared that the seaweed would entangle the ships, or that they had entered some mysterious part of the ocean where there was no wind. They did persist and eventually found the Gulf Stream, which helped carry them on. The real danger for mariners was the part of the Sargasso Sea that includes the infamous doldrums, an area dreaded for having little or no wind. A becalmed sailing ship could become stuck on the sea for weeks or months, leaving a stranded crew with dwindling food and water supplies. But you can't really blame that on the seaweed. Seaweeds are macroscopic or big marine algae. Sargassum is a brown macroalgae seaweed, one of 3 types that we typically find along the coast, including green algae, the chlorophyta, like sea lettuce, red algae, rhodophyta, which includes nori, that we all love in sushi, Irish moss, Irish moss or coralline algae, which contribute to reef building. Red algae have pigments that absorb blue and green light, which penetrates a little deeper in the water, and so they can photosynthesize at deeper levels. They reflect red light back, so we see them as red. And brown algae, the phaeophyta, of which Sargassum is one. In brown seaweeds, the pigment fucoxanthin masks the green of the chlorophyll. These include some of the most commonly seen seaweeds along the shore, like rockweed and knotted wrack. Color is only one element of the differences among these seaweeds. Their chloroplasts are slightly different from each other, as well as some of their reproductive processes. Although they look similar to land plants, seaweeds are not really the same. They don't have any vascular system, no xylem or phloem to transport water and minerals around. They get their minerals by absorption directly from the seawater surrounding them. The ones we find along the shore are normally anchored, we'll see if I can do this, with a holdfast at the bottom, which is just that. It holds the seaweed fast to a substrate, a rock or other sea bottom. But it does not, like roots, absorb nutrients or water. Then there's the stipe. Where is this? Which functions a little bit like a stem in attaching the holdfast to the blade. But unlike a stem or a trunk of a plant, of land plants, there's no transport system It doesn't help transport nutrients around the plant. The blades themselves are probably the most similar up here and up there, in that they have the most chloroplast and do the most photosynthesis, making sugars from carbon dioxide and water. They also tend to have air bladders, which help them float in water when the tide's in, being closer to the surface, getting more sunlight, so they can be more productive in producing the sugars the plant needs. And it's these air sacs, air bladders, that the Portuguese recognized as similar to the grapes that they were familiar with. Seaweeds are primary producers in the ocean, using energy from sunlight to capture the carbon dioxide and make sugars through photosynthesis. Along with phytoplankton, the microalgae, the little ones, seaweeds form a basis for a lot of the marine food webs. Additionally, they provide habitats for many species, and this is especially true for the sargassum because there's a great lack of other nutrient sources in the open ocean. The species of sargassum in the Sargasso Sea are called holopelagic, which means they spend their entire life cycle in the open ocean floating. Many other species, including ones that can be pelagic during parts of their life cycles, begin life attached. They're benthic. They begin life attached to the ocean floor, and they reproduce on the ocean floor. And this is not true for the sargassum. The Sargasso Sea contains large floating beds. So in this is a satellite view, and all of the light blue areas are the seaweed. So you see long strails, you'll see areas that are kind of patchy, so there's long strings of them, and big mats. So it provides a unique habitat for both residents and seasonal and periodic visitors, and the spatial distribution varies widely from little clumps to miles-long weed lines or huge mats. A single strand of sargassum can be as long as a football field, so they can grow long. The Sargasso Sea is bounded by currents rather than land masses. And so if we start on, whoa, sorry about that, our close. So we have the Gulf Stream, which carries water north, and the North Atlantic Current, the Canary Current, and the North Atlantic Equatorial Current. And these four currents together create a gyre, which helps keep the sargassum kind of controlled within it. So it can be distinguished from the rest of the Atlantic by the seaweed and the calm, clear waters. The waters of the Sargasso Sea are incredibly clear. Visibility underwater frequently exceeds 60 meters or 200 feet, and this clarity is due to a low nutrient level. So if you don't have a lot of nutrients in the water, you don't get a lot of plankton and other microorganisms, which actually, even though they're not visible individually, create kind of a blurry effect. So why is it so nutrient poor? One is the gyre itself, and that gyres act a little bit like whirlpools. So the water goes around and it tends to go in and down, and that prevents the more nutrient-rich cold water from coming up and keeps those nutrients deep under the water. It's also located far enough from land that it doesn't get input from rivers or the churning up of tides and breakers, so you don't get that kind of upwelling that you might in other regions. Also, it's got a really stable water column. The warm water's on top, the cold water's on the bottom, and this stable layering inhibits mixing between the nutrient-rich, deeper cold water and the nutrient-poor surface waters. So altogether, it gets to be, big word of the day, oligotrophic, not much nutrients. Okay. In a 1975 research study, measurements were made of the oxygen production from the Sargasso Sea and an estimate of the total mass, and they figured out that the Sargasso Sea could contribute 2.2 billion liters of oxygen per hour. So it's one of the major contributors to atmospheric oxygen. And it also functions as kind of an oasis in a desert. A lot of the rest of the ocean around there is nutrient poor. It's just open ocean. But this offers a habitat for really a dizzying array of species, and also a stop-off point for migrants and other animals who either come to it specifically looking for food, or who migrate past it and use it as a stopping point, refueling point, or rest area. It's also been called a floating rainforest because of the number of species that use it. The Sargasso Sea itself, when we're talking about it, is really only the top 3 meters of the water, 10 feet. And then animals live in it, and if you look at this illustration, it's mostly small animals that live in it, bigger fish below, and they kind of get bigger as you go down the water column. The animals that live there include 127 species of fish from 36 different families. Okay, most of the fish that live in the Sargassum itself are smaller, like the plainhead filefish or the Sargassum triggerfish, and juveniles of bigger fish like sailfish, tuna, marlin, dolphinfish, and porbeagle sharks. As you go under the fish, like in the illustration, you get larger fish like the mahi-mahi, dolphinfish, or marlin, the adults. A little deeper, you get bigger fish like tuna and the larger predators like dolphins and sharks. And if you go way down, you get humpback whales will migrate through this area as they travel between their feeding grounds in the North Atlantic near Iceland, Norway, and New England, and their breeding calving grounds in the Caribbean. The Sargasso Sea serves as kind of a transit zone during this migration as they migrate north to feed or south to breed. And the warm, calm waters are thought to be a suitable environment for them to rest. As far as we know, they don't use it primarily as a feeding stop, but there's not really much that could stop them if there was a handy school of small fish near the mats. In terms of birds, there are at least 26 species of birds that have been documented and identified as using, eating, feeding in and around the Sargassum. They attract fish, crustaceans, other marine life, which provides a great feeding area for birds, including the Bermuda petrel, Pterodoma caho, which was thought to be extinct for 300 years. It was just rediscovered in 1951 by a team of ornithologists led by a man named David Wingate. Early in European settlement, it had been heavily hunted for food and was thought to have become extinct in the 1620s when it was discovered. Now, petrels, if you aren't familiar with them, are one of those birds that spend long times flying over the ocean. And so unless you happen to know where they breed, you could literally go for years without seeing them. There are also some shearwaters, and I couldn't find a good video, but if you listen to the name, you can almost imagine how they fly over the water, including Audubon's here on the left, Puffinus immieri, and this is one of the smallest shearwaters. It doesn't migrate, but remains in the tropics, like in the Caribbean, all year round, and it goes to the Sargasso Sea to feed primarily during non-breeding seasons. Cory's shearwater on the right is the largest shearwater in the North Atlantic, and they breed in the Azores and the Canary Islands, on Madeira, and in the Mediterranean from March to November. And they come to the Sargasso Sea to forage for fish and squid and other small marine animals. And it's known for its long migrations and does stop at the Sargasso Sea to feed and rest on the way. And one more is the Great Shearwater, which in spite of its name is not bigger than the Corey Shearwater. It's within an inch or so, but the Corey Shearwater wins out. And these guys are known for incredible migrations. They pass through the Sargasso Sea to and from their breeding grounds in the South Atlantic, where they breed on a variety of different islands from October to April during the Southern Hemisphere summer. And then they head back to the North Atlantic, where they feed off the coast of North America and Europe for the Northern Hemisphere summer. There are terns that come by, the bridal tern and the sooty tern. The bridal terns nest regularly in tropical areas, but they fly out to the Sargasso Sea to forage because there's so much good food. And the sooty tern also breeds, but they go especially during breeding season. So if you can imagine, breeding season and pre-breeding season is a time when birds need extra protein. So you get birds even like hummingbirds, which we don't think of as insect eaters, will eat insects in the spring because they need extra protein. And so the sooty tern is one that uses the abundance of the Sargasso Sea during their breeding season to support that. But it's not only seabirds. Many land birds stick close to land. They will follow and have the smallest overwater migration that they can, but not all. The American redstart, Setophaga ruticilla, is a neotropical migrant. It migrates from North America into the tropics and occasionally stops at the Sargasso Sea as a stopover on its journey. So they've been seen there, not always and not in large numbers, but they do go there. The blackpoll warbler makes one of the longest overwater migrations of any songbird. So it migrates from North America to South America and frequently crosses over the Sargasso Sea to rest along the way. The mats of the Sargassum are strong enough that these birds can land on them. They can sit and rest and walk around on them. And that was also one of the reasons that Columbus thought, well, we must be close to land because look, these birds are walking around. And they were not all ocean birds. Going into the water, we see eels.
European eels hatch in the Sargasso Sea. Their larvae, less than a centimetre long, take 2 years to travel the 6,000 kilometres to Europe. By then becoming transparent glass eels of about 6 centimetres long. While looking for a home, the glass eels develop into elvers, darkening for camouflage. Attracted to the fresh water from a brook, some elvers are swept into a saltwater pond connected to the brook's culvert. Although aiming for fresh water, eels can also develop in saltwater. Here they can settle to hide and feed, transforming into yellow eels. Hiding by day, wary by night. They can stay in this state for 5 to 20 years and grow up to 1 metre long. When they are ready, yellow eels turn into silver eels and begin their migration back to the Sargasso Sea to spawn. This is the start of their next great adventure.
Okay, so it's a journey of 3,750 miles back to England. Similar distances, we have similar eels in North America that migrate, we call those catadromas, where they migrate out to the ocean to spawn and die, as opposed to salmon, which are anadromas. They live in the ocean and migrate into the rivers. So we have animals going both ways. Okay. A number of sea turtle species spend a lot of their youth in the Sargasso Sea. It's not the only place they go. They've recently discovered some places in the Caribbean and eelgrass beds and other places, mostly with underwater vegetation, where these young sea turtles go to find food and hiding places so they can grow from these little guys that they hatch out as into adults. And so both loggerhead, green turtles, Kemp's Ridley, and hawksbill have all been found there. Within the Sargassum, along with the juveniles of other visitors, juveniles and other visitors, are a number of species that are unique to the Sargasso Sea. And they've evolved specifically to blend with and live in the Sargassum, and the Sargassum frogfish is probably the most famous. Code name Histrio, which is Latin for an actor, a stage player. So the Sargassum's frogfish is voracious. Stalks its prey among the stalks and blades of Sargassum, relying on its well-camouflaged skin to keep it hidden. It clambers through the seed stalks, clinging to them with, you can see these prehensile, hopefully, pectoral fins. And it jets forward by expelling water through its gill openings, and it can open its mouth hugely. It can swallow something bigger than it is. And if that bothers you, don't worry, it's not actually that big. So along with this, but the coloration is just so gorgeous, and they can be hard to see, like this crab, Planus minutus. It's a small little flat crab that lives in the Sargassum and also uses the seaweed as a habitat and a food source. It also is miniature. This guy is a Sargassum pipefish, and it looks a little like a straightened seahorse, which makes sense because they are related. It feeds on tiny plankton and other invertebrates, and according to writing, its body shape and coloration helps it blend in, which makes me think that this artist was not doing a particularly good job with the coloration, but I could not find a photo of a live Sargassum pipefish. There are dwarf seahorses. They also are found in seagrass beds in the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean, as well as in the Sargasso Sea. These are also small. They grow 1 or 2 inches, 2.5 to 5 centimeters long. The bodies vary in color depending on where they are. They're frequently, like other Sargassum animals, well camouflaged. And as you can see, like most seahorses, uses that prehensile tail to hang on. There's a Sargassum shrimp, Leander tenuicornis, and it's closely associated with the Sargasso Sea. This one is gravid, so you see it's carrying lots of eggs with it before it was so rudely brought out of the water to be photographed. and also is found frequently clinging to the fronds of Sargassum. And last but not least is the Sargassum nudibranch, another giant in the area, and it feeds on hydroids. And we're going to watch a little bit of, if you pick up some Sargassum, what this guy would look like. So you can see they're pretty tiny. Moving along. So they're a type of sea slug in the mollusk family, and you know, eat a lot of those other microscopic guys. So we'll move along. So since you live along the Gulf Coast, someday you'll go down to the beach and it will look like this. When the tide is washing the Sargassum in, it's been dislodged by a hurricane or some other storm, and you will inevitably find people complaining about it. But just for a moment, ignore them. Grab a pail, wade into the water, and scoop up some water with seaweed in it. Take the seaweed, shake it gently, because there is an abundance of treasure awaiting.
We shook it out into a bucket, and this is everything that was in there, in a little thing of sargassum. Nudibranchs, crabs.
So, thank you.
Okay, so you could not pay me to go swim into the Gulf of Mexico, but I would go with a bucket and grab a little I am not complaining about that stuff anymore. Isn't it nice to talk about nature? This is just amazing, the world that we live in. Oh my gosh. So, y'all probably have some questions, and we're going to get to those. So we're going to have a quick coffee break. So gather your thoughts together to decide what questions you're going to ask Jenni, and then we'll come back in about 7 minutes. All right, folks, let's have a seat. We have somebody want to, Charles, are you going to pass the microphone around? So if you have a question, raise your hand, and Charles will come around with a microphone. So if you can please be sure to wait for him to get to you so that everybody can hear your question. And please also try and make it a question. Thanks.
Okay, you'll be next. All right, Jenny, I'm going to be selfish and go first. You mentioned Columbus being afraid of getting caught in the seaweed. Can a boat's rudder get stuck in that if it's a small boat? Can you use the microphone?
Okay. That's easier than standing still. To the best of my knowledge, not really. I mean, if you had a propeller, possibly, but and you're going right through one of the bigger mats, but I have never heard of it as actually being a serious problem for larger ships.
Okay. And how many miles across is this?
Oh gosh. It covers, I think more than a million. It's about a third the size of the U.S. is my best estimate. I know I have read at some point in my research, but I should learn.
Went through it in the Gulf of Mexico, and it looked like an island, and we just went right down the middle of it
Okay.
and saw all these
Thank
little
you.
creatures.
Do you know what effect, if any, that climate change is having on the Sargasso Sea?
What I have heard of is that there are more Sargasso blooms. I know a couple of years ago there was a big mat that ended up on the coast of Florida, and they were worried about, and that's happened more. It seems to be spreading, but to the best of my knowledge, it's not clear how climate change will affect that.
You left us with a cliffhanger. Like, at the beginning, when you talked about that ship, like, what happened? Like, do we know?
That was it. That's the only
it.
information
They
I
just-
have, that I assume the ship was towed into port, but to the best of my knowledge, nobody ever found out what happened.
Oh my God, I don't know.
We're on to Susan here. There we go.
Oh, that was, yeah. Oh, well, I guess this might be related because I kept waiting for more about the Bermuda Triangle. And, I mean, it sounds pretty logical when you explain how weird this thing is with those three sides.
It overlaps the Bermuda Triangle on its western edge, but it expands beyond it, so they overlap partially.
Hello. So I've heard that some engineers in Mexico are taking the sargassum because they have so much of it, and they're making a construction material out of it and building houses. Have you heard of that project?
You know, now that you mention it, it sounds familiar. I hadn't thought about it. I know it's sometimes used as fertilizer and that other people are trying to find uses for it. I will check that out. Thank you.
To me, that's tantamount that seems tantamount of taking down the rainforest, you know? It's one of those natural wonders that we don't want to destroy. It's a special habitat, and you start just taking.
So hopefully, it, in and of itself, there's enough sargassum that washes up on coast. If people want to use it, they don't need to go to the Sargasso Sea to get it, usually.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, the more people tend to think too much of it comes up on the coast than not enough. But hopefully it will stay that way, yes, because it is a unique resource.
Who else? Verena?
You know, I would ask about tortoises, turtles, right? Can you talk a little bit about, well, first of all, how do the turtles know how to get there? Because they typically hatch on beaches,
On
right?
beaches.
And then how long does it take them to get there? How long do they stay in the Sargasso Sea?
Okay, most of the ones from the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico, to my knowledge, that swim out. It takes them in the order of weeks, I understand, to get there, and they'll spend several years there before they're kind of big enough to be safer swimming wider around the ocean. I don't know specifics between different species, though. That's kind of the extent of my knowledge on that.
Jenny, do they call the Sargasso the same as the horse latitudes?
So, yeah, the Sargasso Sea spans both the doldrums, like the southern edge is the doldrums and the northern edge is the horse latitudes. And I did do some research because they're kind of connected in the atmospheric circulation, both areas, one where there's warm air rising and there's less wind, and then where that air then seeks down, there's less wind. So those are two different bands. But I'm not comfortable saying more than that because my knowledge is not that detailed on those.
Okay, so that kind of dives into what I was going to ask about, though, and whether there's different ecosystems within that large region of the Sargasso Sea where, you know, different species maybe, or even different species of seaweeds, et cetera. Is there any stratification like that?
Not that I know of. There's two main species of Sargassum flutans that are in the Sargasso Sea. I have not read in my research that they tend to be limited in their distribution, and I don't know of significant differences over the area in terms of speciation or that. So my knowledge is really of the scale of looking at the whole thing is not very pixelated.
I have a question regarding the season of the Sargasso coming out. Is there like a low season where there's less Sargassos coming out? I'm talking from a tourist perspective because I went to the Dominican Republic and the beaches were filled like constantly. So
well, I don't know. There's some coming a lot. I was down on South Padre Island 3 weeks ago, and there was sargassum there, which I had never seen at that time. So it depends a little bit on storms and the circulation and what gets pulled out of the gyre. Sometimes when there's hurricanes that are crossing the ocean, we'll get more, but I don't know. If somebody else does, I'd be happy to have someone with more knowledge. But
Is it a unique phenomenon, or are there other places on the planet where you have something similar?
that's it. It's the only one. There's nothing comparable that I know of or have ever heard of in any of the oceans.
Did you say something about coral and sargassum? Coral?
Coral?
Yeah, is there a relationship there?
Not that I know of, no. Oh, maybe it was some of the red algae or coralline algae, and they do that coralline seaweed, the red seaweed, certain red seaweeds help build coral reefs. But they have calcium in they're stiffer. They have kind of calcium in them, and that beyond that, you're way out of my knowledge zone.
Hello? Okay. I just have another literary reference for you, Wild Sargasso Sea by Jean Rhys, which it tells the story of the madwoman in the attic from Bronte, right? But from her point of view. And it's an amazing novel. But anyway, the title of the book is Wild Sargasso Sea.
Oh, okay.
So
Thank you. It's one I didn't know of.
I thought I'd throw that out there because
This is the question I ask you outside. I think ecotourism would be fabulous there, but it would probably be the beginning of the end of it too, right? So two-edged sword.
That's always a balance, because people want to save the things they love, but you don't grow to love something unless you get to know it.
I was, excuse me, I was curious as if you have some kind of children's program to help them to learn about these things.
I did when I was working at a nature center called the Nature Discovery Center in Bel Air, and we had a Sargasso Sea exhibit for children about that and the seaweed and kind of what you could do in the ocean in general. To the best of my knowledge, they no longer have that exhibit, and I don't know of anything in Houston right now about that, but yeah.
What a great segue. Since we are adult children, what would it take to, like, is there a way to predict when it's there to schedule a field trip, or would it need to be like impromptu field trip? To go check out this sargassum with a bucket. The way you
on the
mentioned.
coast?
I think that would be so cool.
Yeah, we would need a scout to make sure there's sargassum, because you need to get it while it's in the water. And just FYI, if you do this, know that those animals that are in those clumps of sargassum are doomed to die.
Should we return them to the
Because the
sea?
sargassum stays alive, all the animals in it that can, in that tiny bit, stay alive do, but once it washes up on shore, they will die. So if you got them and put them in a saltwater aquarium for a couple of weeks, you know, they're kind of on their last legs anyways. So it's fascinating, but also a little sad.
There's a what is it called? The Galveston State Park or Wildlife, what is that called? You can park for like $5. Galveston State Park, okay. Would they be able to monitor that? Could we do a phone call to them? Will they know?
I can try and find out.
That would be cool.
If they have a website where they post when it.
Oh, I would totally do that.
I'll check it out.
There is the Sea Center of Texas going down 288, and it's free to go. It's an aquarium, and I remember when I was there, they had the seaweed there to touch. The Sea Center, Texas, 288 towards the beach.
Towards near Freeport.
Google it, it's free.
Oh, okay.
And make sure it's open.
That's cool. Thank you.
Here's something else that you want to mention. Houston Interactive is for family members, children.
Oh, okay.
And they have octopus. They have an octopus there in very frigid water that you can touch. They have stingrays or manta rays, I think, yeah, and that you can touch them and you feed them. Are you familiar with this place? But no. What? Okay, manta rays. Well, they give you a little cup and you can feed the animals, and the idea is to bring children closer to nature and to teach them to respect nature. They have lizards, iguanas, a giraffe, all kinds of animals. And it's called Houston Interactive, and my eyesight isn't good enough to read the rest of it. Houston Interactive, it's not that far. It's like 30 minutes away on 5th. You go. Interactive Aquarium and Animal Preserve. They have all kinds of interesting animals, and like the lemurs. Like one of the things that concerned me about the lemurs is my brother told me that when he went on a safari thing with his wife, people under the table said, "Oh, you paid me some money, I'll let put a lemur on your shoulder." And he said, "That's as fun as that is." He let his wife do that, and then later he read an article that you can kill animals that way. So I brought that up to these people. They said, we are very careful with our lemurs. They have a thing where you sanitize your feet and your hands, and they're very careful about that. So they don't just take your money and abuse the animals. They're very concerned about them. They get good quality veterinary care, etc. So just wanted to let you know.
Okay. I think that's it.
Great, thanks, everybody. Great questions. Thank you, Jenny, again. Like that? Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about our upcoming events. You have your handy little program here. For those people who like QR codes, have we got QR codes for you? There's one for events. There's one to give money, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. So be sure and check those out. I especially want to plug today, if you're not going to Fish Starts Talk, and you live in the northeast part of the county, you can go to the Northeast Houston Monthly Social at Back Row Brewing Company. That's from 1 to 4, and they have food trucks, and it's a nice social time. Something new that we've come up with is a monthly midweek late lunch bunch. And so we're going to do that on March 13th. We meet at Nico Nico's. This is just the one down here on Montrose. They have a really great comprehensive menu. You can get whatever you want. They have salads, they have Greek food, they have American food. You know, you can find something. We meet a little bit later, and we meet in the back room there, so it's not quite as, we're kind of on the tail end of the lunch period, and so it's not quite as loud and crowded, and so it's been a nice, so any of those of you who work from home, or you're retired, or you just want to have lunch with some friends, come join us for that. We also have our board meeting coming up on Wednesday, March 19th. It will be virtual, so if you want the link to that, just email board@houstonoasis.org. Blues Night coming up March 20th. We're going to have a food bank. March is busy. We have a food bank outing on March 22nd. The Secular Student Association is hosting Americans United for separation of church and state on Monday, March 24th at the U of H campus. So if you're concerned about those issues, feel free to look into that. I'm going to have Arlen come up real quick and give y'all a quick little spiel about something that's going on in the state right now.
Hi, I'm Arlen Addison, a longtime member of Galveston Oasis, come here a few times. Jennifer, it's nice to give me a few minutes since there's no community moment. On the back, I have a flyer. Last Wednesday in the Texas House, a bill was introduced to ban gender-affirming care for both minors and adults with provisions for forced detransitions. It's HB 3399 by Texas Representative Brent Money. It masquerades as a ban on public funds for gender transition, but if you actually read the bill, and I have the full text of the bill on the back, it is, in fact, a ban on even privately funded and out-of-pocket gender transitions. So no HRT, no surgery, no anything. And I even called Representative Money's office, and his staff confirmed this. It's a total ban. And it's written so broadly that not only would it affect trans Texans, it could easily affect cis Texans. So the same procedure might be allowed if it's considered medically necessary, but it could be banned if it's considered gender affirming. And there's no provision or details on who decides that. So it's very arbitrary, just like we're seeing women being denied essential care if they're pregnant because the doctors are afraid of being prosecuted under our abortion laws. This could easily affect cis patients as well. Further, it strips funding of any doctor or clinic that provides any kind of gender-related transition care, even if they provide essential health care for cis patients. So it's a really bad bill, and Texas is sort of the proving ground for bad bills. Whatever we do, inevitably other states copy. Like I said, it was only introduced this past Wednesday, so it's really fresh. It has no traction whatsoever. But as far as I can tell, it's one of the first bills in the country that not only bans gender-affirming care for minors, but for adults as well, with no exceptions and forced detransition. So if we can smack this thing down really fast, that would be good. I have posted about this on Reddit. I'm making a website soon. It'll be stop.hb3399.org. I'm going to be making flyers, handing them out around the Montrose area, doing whatever else. So if you want to pick up this flyer in the back, it's got all the details, and it has the full text of the bill on the back as well. So anything you can do to help, call, email, write letters. I've written the letter, I've emailed, I've called, I'm doing everything I possibly can, and I'll have getting other people to do it as well. So anything you can do to help out would be really great. Thank you.
Thank you for letting us know about that. That's very important. One more thing to do. Okay. We don't have a pipe organ. We don't have silver chalices. But we do have to rent this space. And we have to rent the storage room unit where we keep all of our sound equipment and our stuff for the kids' room, and my welcome box, and the stuff for the coffee and the bring your own lunch. So that all costs money. So we would really appreciate it if you would be able to give a donation. We have a hat at the back there on the table if you want to give a cash or check donation. There's also a QR code on the back of the program if you want to set yourself up for a recurring donation. Recurring donations are super helpful because they help us budget. If we know how much we're going to be getting, we can figure out how much we can spend. And that's hard to do if we don't know really from month to month what's going to be coming in. So that really is helpful. If you are not able to give financially, we totally get it. So we are just happy that you're here. If you want to volunteer in some kind of way, you can let us do that. But we're just glad you're here, and we hope that you can give in whatever way that you can. So that's the financial pitch. Done. Check. Anybody have any celebrations or concerns? Anybody's birthday? Anybody got a new job? Anybody something else going on? Sure. All right, thank you. Russ. Ooh.
The Declaration of Independence having been signed right on the brass up near Brenham and Chapel Hill.
So happy birthday, Texas. Thank you for pointing that out. That it was not on my radar. Anybody else? Yay. All right, thank you. All righty. Oh, Susan?
I'd like to, I don't know, follow up or celebrate or something. The fact that last weekend, Kevin and CB and I went to see the play. We had
Oh, right.
ensemble theater, and so we got some tickets and we watched the program, and it was well done. And
Oh, good.
some of us are going to go back and see the next play.
Good. Well, we ought to talk about maybe putting that on our events calendar. So why don't you get with me and we'll see if we can get a group of us to go. That would be fun. All right. So we're now going to have a couple of more. We're going to have one other presentation from Glenn and Paul. And then I'll have a little treat for y'all after that. Thank you very much. Those 2 extra strings were worth it.
I thought so too.
Okay, so I'm going to ask y'all once again to do something we don't actually often do, and that's to pull out your phones. So I want you to look up Seaweed by Longfellow. I'll give you a few minutes, a few seconds. Seaweed by Longfellow. So this is a poem that I found last night, and the meter is a little bit different than I'm used to. So as I was reading it to myself, trying to get used to it, I realized what was happening. The cadence of the poem mimics ocean waves. So I'm hoping I can do it justice, but I want you all to read along with me. I didn't want to put it up on the screen because I think it's probably easier for you to just look at it, so just let me know when you're ready. Got it? Seaweed by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. When descends on the Atlantic the gigantic storm wind of the equinox, landward in his wrath he scourges the toiling surges laden with seaweed from the rocks. From Bermuda's reefs, from edges of sunken ledges, and some far off bright azure, from Bahama and the dashing, silver flashing surges of San Salvador. From the tumbling surf that buries the Orkneyan skerries, answering the hoarse Hebrides, and from wrecks of ships and drifting spars uplifting on the desolate rainy seas. Ever drifting, drifting, drifting on the shifting currents of the restless main, till in sheltered coves and reaches of sandy beaches all have found repose again. So when storms of wild emotion strike the ocean of the poet's soul, ere long from each cave and rocky vastness in its vastness floats some fragment of a song. From the far-off isles enchanted heaven has planted with the golden fruit of truth, from the flashing surf whose vision gleamed Elysian in the tropic clime of youth. From the strong will and the endeavor that forever wrestle with the tides of fate, from the wreck of hopes far scattered, tempest shattered, floating waste and desolate, ever drifting, drifting, drifting on the shifting currents of the restless heart, till at length in books recorded, they like hoarded household words no more depart. I thought that was really cool. All right, go in peace, y'all.